Close your eyes and take a deep breath. You are home now, and the world outside can wait. Welcome to another episode of Z in History. Tonight, we are stepping behind the gold leaf of Versailles to look at the hidden exhaustion of the Sun King. History books talk about his wars and his mistresses, but they usually forget the physical toll of being a living monument. Imagine waking up in a room full of dukes who watch you wash your face like it is a holy event. Imagine the pressure of a dinner where you must eat in total silence while 100 nobles stare at your plate. We are following Louis XIV through the year 1686. It was a year of massive public glory, but also a hidden physical nightmare. He could not share his pain with anyone except a few trusted servants. We will look at the heavy costumes, the cold meals, and the secret surgery he faced in silence. The palace is waking up. Chapter 1: The Blue Hour. The year is 1686, and the sun has not yet risen over the gardens of Versailles. Inside the palace, the air is thick. It holds the scent of cooling beeswax from 1,000 snuffed candles. We are standing in the private bedchamber of Louis XIV. The ceilings are lower here, and the silence is heavy. The king lies behind crimson velvet curtains. He listens to the steady tick of a brass clock on the mantelpiece. He feels a sharp heat in his lower back. It is a persistent sting that has become his constant companion. In this early hour, he is simply a man in a cold stone room. He is bracing himself for the effort of moving his limbs. He hears the faint rustle of his head valet, Bangtan, waiting just outside the curtains. Bangtan has slept on a small cot at the foot of the royal bed for years. He is the only man allowed to see the king in this vulnerable state. The king pulls his duvet closer against the winter air creeping under the door. He knows that in a few moments the doors will open. The first of his courtiers will flood the room just to watch him wake up. He takes one final breath of silence before the performance begins. Chapter 2: The Aqua Angeli. The door opens with a soft knock, and the room begins to move with silent servants. The first valet approaches the bed and draws the curtains back with a silver ring. The king is immediately met with the sight of a dozen dukes. They have earned the right to watch him rise. They bow in perfect unison, their silk sleeves rustling in the dim light, because the doctors fear that water opens the pores to disease. The king will not bathe. Instead, he undergoes a dry wash in front of his audience. Bangtan pours a spicy spirit called Aqua Angeli onto a bundle of fresh linen. The king feels the sharp sting of the alcohol as the valet rubs his arms and his neck. He maintains a neutral expression. He makes small talk with the Duke of Orleans about the afternoon hunt. The scent of nutmeg and rosewater fills the air. This morning ritual is a public display of health, even as he feels the hidden throb of his infection beneath the sheets. He speaks in a measured voice, granting favors and nodding to his favorites, while the rough linen moves across his skin. Chapter 3: The Layering of the Idol. Now, the weight of the monarchy begins to settle onto his tired shoulders. The valets bring forward the garments for the grand lever. The Duke of Vendôme is granted the high honor of holding the king's right sleeve, while another noble holds the left. The king stands perfectly still as they slide the fine silk shirt over his head. Every movement is watched and analyzed by the men in the room. He feels a scratchy lace, cravat being tied by the master of the wardrobe. The man adjusts the bow with trembling fingers. Next comes the stiff brocade vest and the heavy state robes. They are encrusted with gold thread and small diamonds. The king whispers a joke to the Count of Brienne to hide a wince of pain as he steps into his breeches. He feels the pull of the fabric across his back, right where his secret bandage is hidden. He does not let his face betray him. He is being dressed like a sacred statue, and he must play the part. He feels the stiff silk stockings being pulled up his legs. They are held in place by garters that bite into his skin. He is now fully strapped into his role. He is prepared to face a world that must never see him as a man of flesh and blood. Chapter 4: The Towering Hair. The wig master arrives through a side door. He carries the mourning wig on a polished wooden stand. It is a towering construction of horsehair and rice powder that stands nearly a foot high. As it is lowered onto the king's head, he feels an immediate, crushing pressure on the base of his neck. The wig master whispers an apology as he adjusts the fit. The king gives a sharp nod of approval. Beneath the heavy artificial curls, his scalp begins its daily protest of the heat. A phantom itch starts at the very crown of his head. He cannot reach it because a king does not scratch his head in public. He listens to the chatter of the Marquis of Dango, who is discussing a new play by Racine. The king offers a brief, witty comment. He keeps his head perfectly level so the wig does not tilt. The heat of the hair makes his ears ring. He can feel a drop of sweat beginning to form at his temple. He catches the eye of his brother in the mirror and shares a look of silent understanding. The wig is a crown of heat, and he must wear it with the same grace as the crown of France. Chapter 5: The Hall of Mirrors. The king finally steps out of his private rooms and into the Hall of Mirrors. 3,000 candles are flickering in the morning draught. He is surrounded by a sea of courtiers who fall back like a wave as he approaches. He walks with a slow, measured glide. He clicks his silver-topped cane against the marble floor. He stops to speak to a young officer from the guards, asking about the fortifications at The officer stammers in his presence. The king offers a small, encouraging smile to put the man at ease. Every single step is a calculated effort of will as he manages the sharp pain in his back. He spots his finance minister, Colbert, waiting by a window. He pulls him aside for a brief, hushed conversation about the navy. The scent of expensive perfumes from the crowd is almost suffocating, but the king remains composed. He nods to the ladies of the court. His face is a mask of serene indifference, while his mind is busy calculating how many more minutes he must stand. He is the center of this universe, and every person in the hall is just a moon reflecting his light. Chapter 6: The Council of State. In the council chamber, the king sits on a high velvet chair to discuss the complicated affairs of Europe. Around him, the ministers, Louis and Bossuet, argue about the borders of the Palatinate and the rights of the church. Their voices grow loud and passionate, but the king remains silent. He watches them with dark, steady eyes. He does not lean back against the cushions, and he does not fidget with the papers on the table. He feels the pins and needles beginning to crawl up his feet as the circulation slows down in his tight silk stockings. He interrupts the debate with a single, quiet sentence that brings the room to an immediate hush. He has a way of commanding the air around him, making everyone lean in to hear his words. His secret ailment throbs with every heartbeat, but he uses the pain to sharpen his focus. He asks a pointed question about the grain harvest, and the Minister of Commerce fumbles for an answer. The room is full of powerful men who think they are clever, but they all wait for the king's nod before they dare to sit. Chapter 7. The Grand Couvert. The afternoon meal is served in the state dining room. Hundreds of people are watching from the galleries. The king sits at a square table alone, while his brother and the other princes of the blood stand nearby. He eats with a voracious appetite that surprises the onlookers, but he does not speak a word. He gestures to the master of the household when he wants a specific dish, and the man scurries forward with a deep bow. The pheasant is lukewarm, and the sauce has a thin, waxy skin. But the king eats it anyway, his eyes scanning the crowd. He spots a courtier who has been absent for a week. He gives him a cold, lingering look that makes the man turn pale. The sound of silver scraping on porcelain is the only thing filling the silent air. He watches the cupbearer pour his wine into a crystal glass with a flourish. He can taste the cold grease of the meat, but he maintains his dignified pace. He knows that his appetite is seen as a sign of his strength, and he will not disappoint his subjects. Chapter 8. The Secret Consultation. In the late afternoon, the king finally retreats to a small, private cabinet, where the doors are locked from the inside. He meets with Felix, his head surgeon. Felix is the only man who knows the full extent of his suffering. He is a man of science with steady hands and a calm voice. He examines the king's back with a gentle touch, and sighs at the lack of progress from the herbal poultices. The king asks him plainly if the operation is necessary. Felix nods with a heavy heart. They sit by the small fire, discussing the details of the surgery as if they were discussing a bridge project. Felix reveals the royal scalpel, which he has designed specifically for the king's body. The king feels a strange bond with this man. Felix is the only person allowed to cause him pain in order to heal him. They drink a small glass of wine together in the quiet room. For these few minutes, the king is not a master. He is simply a man facing a trial. He tells Felix that he trusts him, and the surgeon bows with tears in his eyes. He promises that the Sun King will shine again. Chapter 9. The Grand Couture. The day ends as it began, with the public ritual of the Grand Couture. The room is packed with nobles who have waited all day for this moment of intimacy. The king stands in the center of the room as the valets begin to dismantle his costume. The Duke of Beauvilliers is given the task of holding the king's candle, while the Marquis of Saint Simon helps him remove his heavy brocade vest. The king feels the blood rushing back into his feet as his shoes are unbuckled. He makes a few final remarks about the hunting dogs to the master of the hounds, ensuring everyone feels seen before they leave. The most exquisite relief comes when the towering wig is finally lifted from his head. He feels the cool evening air touching his damp scalp, and he gives a small, involuntary sigh of pleasure. The courtiers watch him with envy and awe as he is dressed in a simple nightshirt of white linen. One by one, they bow and back out of the room, leaving the king with only his closest valets. Chapter 10. The Secret Operation. The room is cleared of everyone except a few trusted witnesses. The atmosphere is clinical and tense as the candles are moved closer to the bed. The king's secret wife, Madame de Maintenon, sits in the corner with her hands clasped in prayer. Louis lies face down on the bed. His jaw is set, and his eyes are fixed on a point on the wall. He refuses to be tied down or held by the valets. Felix approaches with the silver scalpel, and the king takes a deep breath, nodding for him to begin. He feels the first sharp cut. His body tenses, but he does not make a sound. He focuses on the rhythm of his own breathing and the steady voice of Felix, who talks him through every movement. He thinks of his ancestors and the weight of the crown he must continue to wear. The pain is a white heat, but his mind is a cold fortress. He hears the quiet clink of the instruments and the rustle of the linen bandages. He is proving to himself and to the silent ministers in the room that he is indeed the master of his own fate. Chapter 11. The Aftermath. The surgery is over, and the king is still alive. The sharp, biting sting has been replaced by a dull ache that feels like a heavy weight has been lifted. Felix wipes the sweat from the king's forehead and whispers that the operation was a success. Madame de Maintenon comes to the bedside, her face full of relief and love. She brings him a warm drink scented with orange blossoms and honey. She applies herbal poultices made of roses and red wine, which feel warm and soothing against his skin. The king looks at her and offers a tired, genuine smile. For the first time in many months, he can lie still without the constant fire in his nerves. He feels light and hollow, almost as if he is floating. The valets move around the room in hushed tones, tidying the instruments and drawing the curtains. The heavy burdens of the day and the weight of the court have vanished into the night air. He is wrapped in the softest silk and protected by the love of the few people who truly know him. Chapter 12. The palace sleeps. The final candles are snuffed out one by one. They leave only the faint red glow of dying embers in the hearth. The scent of burnt beeswax lingers in the air, a nostalgic perfume of the day's end. Outside the windows, the gardens are silent, and the massive fountains have been turned off for the night. The only sound is the wind whispering through the ancient trees of Versailles. Louis sinks deep into the soft mattress, feeling the coolness of the fresh linens. He hears the quiet breathing of Bang-Tang on the cot nearby, a familiar and comforting sound. The long day is finally over, and the king is at rest. His breath is slow, even in deep, as he drifts into a sleep that is finally free of pain. The palace is a dark, silent mountain of stone. For tonight, there are no more performances and no more protocols. There is only the quiet, the dark, and the absolute peace of the night, as the Sun King waits for the return of the light.